What is going on, everybody? It's Jimmy James 59 here, and I have a build order here that I'm really excited to show you all. We're going to be looking at 20 pop men-at-arms with Indians, right? Men-at-arms rushes, right? And since I've been playing on the ladder, I run into militia rushing, so drushing and men-at-arms all the time. So men-at-arms is definitely a build you want to know, and when you start to get into that intermediate level of gameplay, the Dark Ages and the builds in the Dark Age and early feudal age tend to get pretty efficient, right? Often where games get sloppy is where fighting begins, or there is just a lot of action going on the map, right? And that's just distracting for players that are at that intermediate elo. But the builds themselves are often very efficient, and especially when you have Arabia generations that have, say, elephants, and more players are actually luring deer to the TC now, right? It's a practice I see a lot more common. You're going to want to understand how to employ some of these early rushing strategies, whether you are going to actually use them yourself or you want to think about how to defend it, right? I actually have a video in a previous build order about defending these early rushes with something like a 20 pop archer defense, right? If you want to go check that out, that's going to be, I'll put that at the end of this video actually, see if you like it. But yeah, the reason I wanted to do this video, and I wanted to do this with the Indians, because the Indians are a really interesting civilization in AOE2. Spirit of the Law, right, who I'm sure a lot of you know, did a video pretty recently on underrated and overrated civilizations, and he actually found that Indians are, I believe it was the most underrated civilization in the game. They have a pretty high win rate compared to how often people actually play them. And not only that, but in the last major S-tier tournament we had for 1v1s, right? I'm thinking of King of the Desert 4, Arabia. We saw Indians played a lot. I mean, it was very commonly picked Civ, and even though there's bans and tournaments, the fact that Indians were so common, I do think says something about their play. And yet, Indians are a civilization, right, that you don't even get knights, and you also don't get arbalists. So it's a civilization that really does have some limitations, and so the thing about Indians, right, is that they have a great economic bonus, and that's one of the things that makes their early rushing really strong. And so I wanted to explore that in this video, looking at their 20 pop men-at-arms into archer build. So I'm going to go ahead, get this thing started, and let's go ahead and jump into it. And so this build starts off pretty normal here, where we're getting our 2 houses up, and we're going to get our first 6 villagers on to sheep and our next 4 to wood. So a very standard start. And while we're doing this standard start, what I want to do is I want to take a moment to actually think about the map, setting up the game, etc. So we're Indians and we're up against Mayans. So this is pretty tricky. These American civs can be a very difficult matchup for Indians because there are no knights for us to really make use of our camels, and Indians do get fully upgraded cavalry archers, but with a civ like Mayans that has plumed archers, as well as the fact that Mayans have great eagles, this can actually get pretty tricky, right? And so we see our Mayan player in the north has a pretty decent map, right? The berries are not in a bad position, and I'll zoom out a little bit. Pretty decent map to wall up, actually. Our map to wall up, I think, is a bit trickier, right? This is pretty open. You really need to wall it out pretty far from here if you wanted to base wall this. This is a pretty easy area to wall up. So it's not a bad map, but we do have this forward gold. And looking at this forward gold, this is actually, I think, a pretty good map and civilization matchup to think about going with men-at-arms, right? We want to hit early. We don't want to play in the late game with Mayans because, as I mentioned, we lack the knight line altogether. We don't have arbalist, and not only that, we really only have heavy cavalry archers as an option, and that's not going to be a great matchup with eagles, and especially dealing with Mayan skirmishers. And our infantry is going to be really subpar. Indians do get champions, But, so I'll zoom in just a little bit, check out this elephant lore, right? As we're also going to lure in a deer to the town center, as you can see. This, right? Indians just don't have a lot of options. We do have hand cannoneers, but that can get a little tricky. And it's not like we can mass those up earlier in the game. So we're really going to want to, I think, play this one with an aggressive strategy and not let the Mayans get going. And so a really fast men-at-arms build is a pretty nice play here that we're going to be going after, right? And so let me just put it on my scouting image just for a little bit, right? You can see we're doing a pretty decent job scouting the base. We got our elephants, right? It looks like we found these 2 sheeps. And so getting back to the build, again, it's pretty standard where we had our villager number 12 make this house, make the mill, and we're going to get 4 on berries, right? You can see here, right, we have 7 on our TC food, right? Now that we have 4 on berries, right, so this is where the build gets a little bit different, right? We're basically going to send our next villagers at the TC. We're going to keep sending them to food as we send another villager out to go collect this elephant, right? So you can see, luring it in, right? And basically, we're going to get all of our villagers to be taking this food under the TC, except for the last one. And that's when this build gets just a little bit different, right? But you're going to see we're going to have the resources to click up, right? Meanwhile, we're out scouting our opponent's base. We figured out some things about him, right? We're taking a look around, and we're going to check and see what resources he has, right? Okay, so, right, our 19th villager here, we're sending him out, and then here, let me pause, right? So, the last villager you make in this build, you send them out to make the barracks, and then what you want to do is you want to take 2 villagers from your TC, and you're going to send them out to make a house, and then go to gold, right? And so the purpose behind this, right, is that we want to get this barracks up, and we want to have this house, since we're technically housed right now, we're not making anything yet, we want to make sure that house is up, so that way we can start making militia basically as soon as the barracks gets built, right? That's the idea. And so, again, when you think about, say, something like a 22 pop men-at-arms build, right? You typically have 2 on gold when you are going up, and so that's really what we're doing here. But again, we're just leveraging the Indian bonus of villagers costing less food in order to have a faster uptime. And now this villager who's making the barracks is a bit more. We can do a little bit of more of what we want with him. You probably want to make another house, maybe try and get some walls up, but this is a really fast build, so you're not going to be able to get a lot of walls up, right? Here's going to help, right? Be a gentleman here and get this mining camp up a bit faster. Now, what's the other thing you want to do? Well, you want to get 2 lumber camps up, so you can see we have 4 right now on this lumber camp. We're going to need to get to 5 on it here in a minute. Right now we're collecting some food, and we're going to make another lumber camp down here with 4 villagers. And what we're going to do is, what we're basically going to do here is we're going to get to 10 at the very end of this build. But what I like to do is I like to wait a little bit on getting those villagers to the lumber camp. And so this 10th villager here, I should send it over in a second. I might actually wait and have that be the first villager that I actually send to the lumber camp here. You can play it a few different ways, right? Sometimes it's good to keep the 3 villagers in here so that way you can collect more food, and you are going to want to get your food going at a pretty good clip, right? You can see we're up to the next stage very swiftly, and taking a look at the action here, right? We're already harassing our opponent, right? Making his life a bit more difficult. And you can see, right, we still don't have any idle TC time. Well, okay, we have 1 second that just accumulated here, right? So we're doing pretty good. So you're going to have the resources to do what you want here is the point. So now what we're going to do, if we're looking for resources to hit here. Meanwhile, we're going to go ahead, get an archery range up. You can send 2 villagers to get the range up a little bit faster, but given that it's a pretty tight build already, sometimes it's better to just go ahead, collect the resources. And we've also sent a villager out from the TC in this case, right, to get some more, to get our other buildings up, right? So to get our house up, to get our blacksmith up, right? And now we're going to start, right? Now we're going to start actually walling this base. So we're actually having 2 walling villagers, and we're getting our archer production going, and we're running around, right? We are trying to make our opponent's life a bit more difficult. This is actually a really nice move here, and I'll pause the video, right? Look, we could go around, right, trying to hit these berries. That's probably something we'd want to do, but one of the things we're doing by idling this villager and forcing it to repair is we're limiting the gold production of our opponent, right? And so, again, you want to think about what kind of damage you're doing. And yeah, we're not killing villagers here, but one of the things I know, given that we're going up against Mayans, is that since we're not going up against a scout player, he's not going to have a lot of demand for food, and Mayan resources last a bit longer anyways. You can see, right, there actually still is a sheep underneath this town center, right? The guy we're up against, he's probably going to want to get out archers or eagles, right? And those are actually some units that can be pretty tricky to deal with because, you know, eagles, I do still have my men-at-arms, right? Oh, yeah, right here. I just have the men-at-arms. I can deal with eagles, so I'm not as worried about them. But if he goes archers, kills the men-at-arms, and then maybe tries to switch into some eagles, and I have archers and skirmishers, then I'm going to need to add something else into my army. So this could get really tricky, and so by idling the gold here, right, the American civs are usually so dependent on gold, then I am actually keeping those gold units from hitting the field, and so, right, the fact that I'm doing that should give me a military advantage, right? So that's the way I'm approaching it in this game, and right now we're just causing trouble, and we're using this back home to get walled up. Now, in this build, right, what you want to do, right, you're going to play one range fast fletching. You can see we already have fletching coming in. We're going to get fletching at under 13 minutes, right? So very, very fast fletching. We've already got an archer queued up in here. We're going to wait till we get fletching, send them out. Okay, boom. All right, fletching's about to come in. They're gone. And we're going to have 2 on gold and basically, excuse me, 2 on gold, 4 on gold to keep the archery range going. Mix in a skirmisher, right? You can do that in this build, right? Especially with the Indians, it's really great because you're saving food on your villagers since they cost less, so it's much easier to get those skirmishers in there. And basically, as soon as you have 60 wood, you want to try and seed farms as quickly as possible. This can be tough to do when you are working on fighting and applying pressure, but hey, you know, that's just the way things go sometimes. And right now we're just going to keep these, we're going to keep moving around. There are these archers hanging about, but hey, we have our archers as well, right? We see an eagle come in here, and this is actually kind of a mistake for me losing the scout. I wish I would have gotten away from it a bit earlier, but so it goes. Now, this is really important here, actually. So we have this eagle out in the field, and eagles are really tricky to deal with. But the thing is, we have fletching, and having fletching here makes it a lot easier for our archers to deal with eagles. One of the reasons we're bringing the men-at-arms back is just in case he tries to switch and make more eagles. We really want to ensure that we have units to defend against them, right? So keeping these men-at-arms alive is something that's pretty important here. And we can see our opponent, right, has invested in archer armor. Really interesting choice here, right? And he's going to get fletching now, so he's going to have these archers pretty well upgraded. So adding in the skirmisher here is actually a pretty nice move. And we've also taken this really nice position on the hill, though really nice micro from our opponent here, actually. But this skirmisher right here is actually pretty legendary, killing those archers just before fletching comes in. And we don't have the armor upgrade. Our opponent has both upgrades in, but he doesn't quite have the production. And we've mixed those skirmishers in here, and that's not something that I'm that worried about because, look, you know, we still have, right, we still have 2 men-at-arms that can defend, say, if our opponent wants to go into eagles. So this is a piece of advice, actually, I think you want to keep in mind is that even though men-at-arms do tend to lose some of their value in mid-feudal age, you do want to make sure that you're getting some value out of them, right? And so I think that this, to be critical of my own gameplay, I think that actually letting this Men-at-Arms, even though we are going to get a villager kill out of it, it's still a little bit risky, maybe a little bit of a mistake, because we really want units to be able to help defend this army, but we're in such a juicy position here, right? We've done, look at how much idle time we've created for our opponents, and we've only had a little bit of idle time for ourselves, right? Still under 1 minute, right? So we're keeping, right, our economy running pretty well, and we are adding in the archers, and now we're actually, right, we've gotten 3 villager kills, and this is just such a difficult position for our opponent, right? We have the skirmishers, right? So even though he has the armor, one of the other things we've done really well in this game is we've used our hills very effectively. You've noticed that most of the fights we've taken on hills, which means we're doing more damage, and our opponent is doing less damage, right? So this has been, right, he's been having to throw away these units, we've been getting more damage, we're up to 4 eco kills, and all of the idle time that we are creating here has been really, really good for us, and we've gone over a minute in our idle time. Not too bad given how heavy the fighting has been. And as you can see, right, you should see us, we have clicked up to Castle Age, I believe. Yep, there it goes, right? We could have gone up a little bit earlier, but we got another villager in the queue, have a bigger economy. Not so bad, right? Now, this is a pretty tight, pretty aggressive build here, right? You notice we actually haven't gotten our eco upgrades. That's something of a mistake, actually. I wouldn't recommend that you do that. We've actually had the food to get them this whole time, so don't make that mistake in your gameplay. That's something I wish I could go back, and we're getting horse collar now, and we're getting some more upgrades. I actually think I just forgot about this, so you know that this is a mid elo game that is being played where you forget to get double bid X. It's embarrassing to even show it on this video, but hey, we're playing okay so far. Perhaps it was worth it to get the damage that we got in. Now, from this position, right, and I'll actually pause here for a moment. So there's really, when you're playing as Indians, there's really 2 things that you want to think about, right? You could play this going with probably something like 3 ranges and playing into cavalry archers. Now, that can get pretty tricky because our opponent may have something like eagles or could play into skirmishers, and so that's one way you could approach it. I think that that's the right way if you're going up against an opponent who's going to be going knights, getting cavalry archers, playing the hit and run game, get that mass up. Cavalry archers can be very, very effective, but we're not going to have to worry about knights this game. And so the setup that we're going for here, one of the other important things you want to keep in mind with Indians is the fact that you can actually, you miss out on plate barding armor in Imperial Age, but you do get +1 Pierce armor in Castle Age on your stable units and in Imperial Age, which means that you basically get something like a free plate barding armor by Imperial Age, except you're going to be missing 1 melee armor. You get like the Pierce armor of it, and that does mean that your light cavalry in Castle Age actually have an extra Pierce armor, right? So you have 5 Pierce armor once you get those bad boys fully upgraded, and so that's something we're interested in, which is one of the reasons why, right, we're seeding lots of farms, and I prioritize getting horse collar, because if we're going to be running something like 2 stable light cavalry, that means we need to research the light cavalry upgrade, we have to research all these archer upgrades, and also get the 2nd cavalry armor upgrade. But we don't want to just play with light cav here, right? We have villagers on gold, and so one of the things that I recommend is to just go ahead in Castle Age and play something like a crossbow light cavalry combination, and think about at some point in the future making your way to heavy cavalry archers. But don't be afraid to play that early on, because the crossbows can help defend against pikemen, and the light cavalry are really going to help you when our opponent is making something like crossbows or skirmishers of their own. So if they want to make siege or skirmishers, it's going to be really tough for those. It's going to be really tough because the light cavalry are going to be there, and you're going to have the crossbows able to take out pikemen if they want to go pikemen. So it's a pretty good combination. But we're pretty decently ahead in this game, right? You can see the idle eco time and just the damage that it's actually done to our opponent, where our opponent's really nowhere near clicking up, right? And so this is the power, right? Mayans, I think, are acknowledged universally as one of the best civilizations in the game. And, right, you can see how Indians, which are, you know, what we might consider an underrated civilization, we can see the power, actually, that getting out to that early rush, that fast start, we can see the power that that has, actually. And so we're going to go ahead, get our Bodkin Arrow, get our light cavalry upgrade, but at this point, our opponent can see the writing on the wall here, has taken a lot of damage, right? The Eco KD is pretty similar, actually, but we sacrificed a decent bit of military to get those economic kills and create that idle eco time, and we're going to pick up the win here. So, you know, GG to our opponent here, right, who played a good game, right, but we just used that pressure, right? We recognized what the matchup was, right? Just cycle through these statistics here. So you can see the economy, right? Our up times, as you can see, right, we could have gone up a little bit earlier, but still not a bad castle time. And we can see basically a perfect feudal age time. So you're going to have the resources to do this build. And we just really got out to, well, I don't know, a little too poor to get Capture Age Pro, but that's okay. We have all the information we probably need here, right? And so that's the build, right? So, you know, you can, as you can see, right, it's a pretty powerful build. You can get up early and put pressure on your opponent. And so that way, when you're dealing with some of these more tricky civilizations, right, you can use the power of these builds to try and even the game out and recognize the matchup that you're in. So, and I'd also say that, you know, what you want to do is think about things ahead of time, what you're going to go for. Something like crossbow light cavalry would have been a really nice play, I think, against Mayans here, and that's what we would have gone for. But we put enough pressure on our opponent to just get there. And this really is the build, the Dark Age and the Feudal Age is really more important to showcase here, because once you get into Castle Age and Imperial Age, you tend to have to play into the context of the game, and that's important, and that's one of the reasons why I wanted to stop and take a little bit of time to explain why we were doing what we're doing and what we could have gone for and what was going to be appropriate here, right? And as you can see, right, we were able to get a lot of farms up, right? And so we would have been in a pretty decent position. And so always remember, right, get double bid axe. Don't do what I did. Be a better player than me. That should be your motto, and that's probably also something that's within your ability here, right? And so anyways, so I hope you've enjoyed this video, right? If you found this at all helpful, or you think this would be a good build for you to integrate into your gameplay, right, go ahead, you know, drop a like on this video, and hey, go ahead, you know, subscribe to the channel. You know, putting out a lot of content these days, and I really like the discussions that we have, and it's a lot of good people hanging around on the boards here. So we have a good time. So, and you know, we want to ultimately, at the end of the day, right, you know, this for me, and I think for all of us, is really all about sharing our love for the game and spreading this game to new people. So with that, I'll go ahead and sign off here, and I'll see you guys out there on the ladder. Peace.